right, everyone, we are recording now.
Thanks. Hey Pam, before you kick off, I know we've got a lot of people on here, and I know we've talked to different people one-on-one, but never in this large of a group. And I know you guys have, trying to talk to the stakeholders to let them know what's going on. Just real quick, I mean, part of why we've got a broad audience here is what we're trying to do is make sure we get the input from various stakeholders to try to use PlanView the way it's intended, and how can it help enable some of our strategic intent as we go forward trying to be a product company. And so part of what we wanted from PlanView is we want that outside perspective from them to kind of say, hey, what's the best use of the tool in trying to achieve these things? And what we really talked about were things like product management, portfolio management, and agile. Those were kind of some of the key things, knowing that we're all on a journey to try to mature those things. So as we go through here, we won't have all the answers. What we're looking for is, okay, what would be the most appropriate roadmap for us to at least start prioritizing things and trying to move forward as we go into next year. So anything else you want to add, Pam?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Pam.
Yep.
See, that's a good thing you see the camera. So that you don't hear the dogs barking wanting in. No, that is a good overview of, and then we'll talk a little bit here in a minute about what we did to get to here where we're at. So
Okay,
thank you,
thanks.
Derek, for that. Okay. Natalie, are you sharing, or did you want me to share since I have the?
I think you were going to share the first couple slides for the strategic roadmap, and then I will take over at the capability map.
Okay. So let me get that up. I had it open. I just didn't have it ready to share.
Actually, since I'll be taking over, I'll just share, and then you can just tell me where to go.
Okay.
Let's just do that. That way it's just consistent. All right. Do you see the intro page?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Fabulous.
Okay.
There we go.
So quick introduction. So Natalie Harrison is the PlanView consultant that we have been working with. Leanne and I have worked with her over the last couple of years, and super knowledgeable. We have great respect for Natalie. And so when it came up about doing an assessment of where are we at, how do we want to use the tool, where do we want to be with the tool, then it was a no-brainer for us to say Natalie's the person that we want to work with on that. And she is our rock star. So thank you, Natalie, for everything that you have done so far and what you will be doing with us in the future. I appreciate that.
Now I have to live up to that, though. So.
That is not so hard. You don't even have to try. Okay. So agenda for today. If you want to go to that.
All right.
So we're going to talk about a little bit about the approach. Again, what did we do to get here today to start presenting some information to you guys? And then what was some of our roadmap considerations, what our goals, our success criteria look like for NASCO, and what do we, the interviews, we did a few interviews to talk to key stakeholders of what's some of the things that work well, what's some of the pain points, what do you want to do differently, or what kind of information are you getting out of or wanting to get out of PlanView that maybe you're having problems doing, or what's working well, right? So we'll talk about that. And then Natalie's going to walk through the capabilities of PlanView, right? The whole tool, the suite of tools that PlanView provides. Then what's the capabilities? What's in our future, the things that we can do? She's going to walk through a quick demo, very high level from like a senior leader. We have a lot of high level people in this meeting. So what does that look like in PlanView, right? To kind of help get you level set in this is how the information flows through the tool. This is the kind of business decisions that you can do because of that. And again, to help kind of level set. And then we'll get into the roadmap. So working with Natalie, we've talked about what our priorities are, what we feel our priorities are, of kind of the decisions, the processes that we're trying to implement, this journey of becoming a product company while we're also trying to do this agile transformation. And so because of those, our MVPs are what's our quick hits, are the things that we know that we need to configure the tool for in order to allow us to use it for out of the box functionality and give us all the information that we're needing. So, okay, so next page. So this is a little bit about kind of the approach. How did we get here? And so we looked at, strategically, what are we trying to do? What do we want to do with the tool? Some of you have hopefully seen a PowerPoint that got published around it internally to NASCO about some of our success criterias. What's our goals of the things that we're trying to do? And so those are like, investments aligned to all of our investments are aligned and they're all tracked in PlanView. And it's all tracked to a NASCO strategy. And the benefit of that is visibility, right? It's not on multiple different spreadsheets or anything. It's all on a tool that we can do multiple reporting capabilities out of. Investment decisions are based on defined and measured value with clear success criteria. So making sure that we have our standard, everybody is on the same page. What are we investing in? What's leading to that? If we start choosing priorities or above the line, below the line, what's in, what's out, making sure that everybody has that same visibility. And so there's no gap in communication. We all the important parties can see all that information visibly. Program management process, that they're standardized, that they're consistently applied. We have areas across NASCO that everybody does it their own way. And so, which makes it difficult when you say, okay, what's this look like rolling up to the strategy? You have multiple spreadsheets, you have multiple PowerPoints you got to go grab all this information into. How do we standardize that? How do we ensure that programs and projects are managed in a consistent manner? So if we have change in personnel, then it's easy for that transition and it's not having to learn a different way to do it. Differentiating the products that add value to the Blue healthcare ecosystem that generates growth. So again, what's that product roadmap look like? What do we want to do with our product? How do we get there with what we want to do? Making sure, again, it's all about visibility and allowing the reporting, the tools to be able to facilitate some of those processes. So again, I'll say it a million times, right? Visibility and consistency is what is key. Enterprise resource capacity management. Where do we have gaps? Where do we have resources that, or gaps in our skill sets? We have this skill set and we're really good, we're staffed accordingly, but we have this skill set that we kind of need and we don't have this, the staff we need, or the utilization across that, right? Here's our key people and they're always being pulled into these programs. How do we shift that work? How do we get visibility to who's working on what? How utilized or underutilized are our resources that we do have? And then also, along with that, allowing our teams to be able to have consistent tools of managing their own team budgets, their own team capacities also. And then a decentralization, adoption of the financial management standard reporting that aligns with the financial controls and commitments that we have, making sure that finance has the information that they need. How do we get them the information? How do the finance and the project managers or program managers all have consistent visibility and information of how a program status is happening, and that anybody can pull that report or grab that information and have faith and trust in the information that they are pulling. So those are kind of like large areas of what is it that we want to do with the tool. So we took that and we went and had some key meetings. Sorry, Natalie, I'm all over the place.
I didn't know where you wanted me to be.
Yep, you're good. You're good. So go back one more slide. So I talked about goals and success criteria, kind of just talking about, we reviewed these strategic initiatives. We reviewed what is it that we want to do with the tool. We interviewed multiple people. Those key business units helped bring the visibility to things that are painful, things that are working, or what's working for one area is not really working for the other area. So it brought to light some of that to help us identify and talk with Natalie. Here's our pain points. Here's how we have the tool configured today, but here's where we get stopped. Like we want to do the next thing, but we're limiting ourselves, or we feel like we're limiting ourselves. So how can PlanView help us look at what we're doing today and how do we get to that future to, again, help us through that transformation, help us get to that product company, that agile transformation. So we met with stakeholders, we defined those priorities, we talked about all those key details, and then Leanne and I worked with Natalie's to say, okay, what's our quick wins? What are the things that we know we need to do quickly because we have a stopgap that we need to facilitate now? And then what are those other process improvements, tool improvements, and how does that line up? And so they end up being building blocks on top of each other, helping us get to the final solution. But it takes setting up some new functionality that we haven't used, cleaning up functionality that we have today or configuration that may be limiting us, and then what is the next steps to get to everything else, right? So we can have these great reports and things out of the tool. So what Natalie's going to go through today is what that roadmap looks like. What are those quick wins and those other things that we need to start digging more into? We've touched it all at a very high level, so that way she has an understanding of how we use the tool. What do we want to do as a business? It's about the tool, but it's also about supporting the business, supporting the processes that allow us to move freely and consistently to get to the bigger picture, right? So we can do great, status updates, report outs to senior level managers. So she's going to talk through some of that of what does that really mean for us. Once we look at that roadmap, we need, final agreement, approval. Yep, this looks good. Yes, this is what we want to move forward with. Yes, we agree with the future vision of how we want to use the tool. And then we'll start talking about okay, what's that mean? Each one of our MVPs, what's the timeline on that? What does that entail? And then we'll start having more deeper dive sessions to really dig into the roots of all of that. Okay, so I talked a lot. Poor Natalie, I was in between a couple of slides. Is there questions so far before we get too much farther? Everybody on board?
Yeah, you covered there's a lot of things, and I think that's why it kind of ties back to why we've got so many different people on here. I think, and for the most part, and this has been, I think we with the tool we're probably reverse most of PlanView's customers. We have because of how we used it, and with finance as our primary stakeholder, we have a low level of information down to a project level, but we haven't, as a company, we haven't embraced and governed that higher level mapping. So,
right.
And then in between there is all the other things you talked about, resource management and skill sets, and a lot of other things that we need to just keep in the forefront of our mind as we start to set this up. So you covered a lot, but it ties back to why we have so many different people on here.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, Natalie, I'll let you take over.
All right. Well, and we had these as well, but I think you covered a lot of, in much more detail, all the things that we were going to be covering. I put this together, though, to kind of keep my head focused on the capabilities that we were specifically trying to achieve. So definitely all the things that she mentioned should be summarized here in one or two words, but for us, you're going to see this on the capability map presented in just slightly a different way in the capabilities that have to be enabled in the application to meet the success criteria and the initiatives that Pam just mentioned. So this should look pretty familiar, not too terribly different than what you heard from her, but helps keep me focused, and you should see it again on the following slide. The value statement for the first MVP also is a guardrail for us to make sure that the thing that we're focusing on provides you the most value quickly. And then all subsequent MVPs are also intended to meet some sort of value and to continue to provide value from the application. So given these two slides for me, so taking something that was very, very broad and trying to narrow it down and stay focused, we also have a capability map that is also lots and lots of details and lots of capabilities. So when I hear about the success criteria needed and the goals that we're trying to achieve, I share all of this information. This would be if we were going to put in the entire solution front to back. So this is left to right, top to bottom, solving the entire solution. Everything is not enabled in your environment. And what would happen if we did, if we wanted to? And are there any goals or any items on here that we need to make sure that we are kept aware of? So things like objectives and key results and hitting the OKR. Some of those statements are agile in nature and lead us down a path of lean portfolio management or something a little bit more on a journey. Then we still have traditional type planning. You'll see that in here in spades when you see strategy, or organizations, organizational financial management, things like that are very traditional. And then enterprise architect management. So if we get into that information capability, or when we start talking about our architecture, business capabilities, we talk about turning on maybe an additional functionality or using things within the existing portfolios. It's color coded. I realize the colors are really loud, but they show us all of the whole entire solution with all the products embedded. For us, it's a complete solution. And in my meetings with Leanne and Pam, where it was like, well, okay, so we can do it this way, or we can, go into another product and try to solve it that way. So there's many opportunities to try to achieve the same thing. And we have just this broad range of things we have access to. So when we talk about something like visibility, which was the very, very first, this transparency, giving you visibility into the work that you're doing. Right now, your configuration is very isolated. You sit in one structure. You sit very, very tightly in this one little purple box. And it's in this delivery space. And there's all this other information that we actually have access to. So I'm trying to open up the gates a little bit more to find some access to provide you more of that visibility, transparency, also scalability, right? We all want to be able to scale. And this tiny little world right here, we were bumping up against walls, right? We just couldn't get to what we wanted to. We wanted to be able to group work. We wanted to be able to do financial roll-ups. We want to see financial information in a different way. And then also still be able to use the tool. And those are the two things that, sometimes kind of battle each other. PlanView's sole purpose, right? Our number one thing that we are known for is strategic portfolio management. So this whole thing across the top, right, is solved very well. And it's what we do well across the industry. We are a strategic portfolio management platform first. All this planning activity, very, very popular for us, something that we can take on. But this type of planning right here is in that strategic forum or in the product delivery forum, value statements, KPIs and OKRs. The financial aspect of this here, it's the one box down here, down the bottom, but it's not the only time financial management is actually mentioned. It's mentioned in different ways up across the top in its relationship to the strategy, its relationship to the value stream. We are not a general ledger or even a very good subledger, right? We know that about ourselves from a financial perspective. But we can provide that financial portfolio information either by the enterprise architecture, the applications, total cost of ownership, and then, of course, by your project work, your strategic work, and your product work. So that product work meaning the things that are operational, the things that keep the lights on. So that's like a whole bunch of things that are bigger and broader than staying down here in this space right here. So in looking at this, you know, when we're trying, it's a little bit overwhelming and it can be intimidating if we start to think about all the things that we might want to accomplish and be able to do. So I showed at that point then just a quick demo to Pam and Leanne. And I said, well, this might be then what you want to do. I heard all your pain points. Now, what do I think would be the best way to solve it? So I showed them a couple of stories, a couple of use cases. I start here on the reports and the outputs section here for these tiles, because a lot of the data and information on here is what's providing that transparency and visibility into what is actually happening, right? Financially, what's happening to us strategically, right? Are we meeting our innovation criteria? Are we operationalizing where we're supposed to be? These type of views tell us that the data integrity is actually there. What is happening? And this is immediate. This is hitting the transactional database using Power BI and embedded tiles straight within the UI for me to see the activity and performance of my strategic portfolio. So this is a strategy to delivery view. Power BI, you might be familiar with it. It allows me, not necessarily drillable, but allows me to focus so I can click throughout and I can get updated information based on where I want to focus my attention. And I'm someone who has full access and visibility to the dashboarding directly within the UI. So we have a couple of these. Strategy to delivery was one, and then another favorite. Then we have a wealth of them, so we're not limited to just what you see, but then something more focused on the financial funding or even project financial dashboards, things like that. Hopefully some of these will load. So one of the spaces where I know we wanted to take you was strategy. Our strategic portfolio view allows us the ability to roll up work. So if I have initiatives or programs, epics, any of those type of terms that I am delivering, and I want to group them together, and this is like work, this epic, this product, this application, they're rolled up to the delivery of this initiative to this particular value stream. This type of road mapping and potentially even financial information, right? That's, you know, one of the biggest drivers here is my ability to fund and roadmap according to the structure, and allows me to do different type of modeling in this one portfolio. I have a traditional view here, objective, strategy, program, initiatives, right? And then the work, or mission, value stream, theme, initiative, and then the work. So this is giving me a little bit of variation on how I want to deliver my programs. But not even in theory, like in practice, all of these work items here, they're individually managed. They have individual start and finish dates. They are going to release something. They are providing value, and they individually cost money, and I'm budgeting them. This entity up here on the top is where all this work is related to, and it rolls up and then is compared against the plan. So if I had $30 million or I had $6 million, what could I do? And I can distribute that funding down to the initiatives or programs and to the work that's actually being done. That's a top-down approach for me to be able to see the supply of money and funding and effort compared to what's being demanded. This is one of the number one use cases that we do solve for, because that solves the strategic portfolio management story.
Thank Natalie. You went right. I was going to ask Heidi, and because I know Heidi Lindley. I mean, this was as a stakeholder, this was part of that. So as we start to put those standards in place, and we know how to structure that, then we can get the roll up that ties back to, I believe, some of the processes you guys are trying to now put in place.
Right. Yeah. What I see here is that this ties those kind of layers that we have from a product management perspective, strategic goals and initiatives that we are broken down across the delivery teams into epics. This really ties that work together from a strategic perspective down into how it actually gets assigned to teams to do work.
Back to the transparency. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
The
this is
organization.
Chris.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Chris. Yeah, I'm NASCO's CFO. Nice to meet you. This is really awesome. You mentioned some things that are really exciting. Even your, what you said was a very busy slide. I mean, that's really exciting, and that's really where, I think Derek would agree as well. We've used the tool effectively, but really stretched it beyond what it was ever intended for in some spots. Because we have never, had the structure around the strategy to even put that in place, right?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you go back to when we first started rolling this out, I mean, actually, we started with strategy, and it fell apart very quickly because it wasn't managed and governed. So, that's when, we basically said, okay, we're just going to use this tool for what we know we need, and gone from there. So, and what you're showing makes perfect sense, but you said some things that I think are key as we think about what is possible. So, you mentioned when you get down to the work level, like where you were showing the page with the work and the breakdown, you specifically said these are, basically independent pieces of work. Once you get down to a base level, which you have to define, you can report on that, but obviously you can't report on what you don't track. And just a point as you're talking through this, I think a big struggle we're having is the multi-dimensional reporting. So it's really, okay, so you've got an epic, do XYZ. That epic might span multiple products. It might span multiple delivery teams. It might span multiple projects. So the epic is still an aggregator, and it's hard to get below that epic and do what is intended here without just simply doing allocations or algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense where I'm at? Because like what you're showing here on this slide, in many context views, like looking at a product hierarchy, we can do this today. We can't do it by epic because epic or story is not cleanly aligned to the other structures. So there's a lack of mapping from hierarchy to hierarchy. And I think the organization tries to pivot. Okay, now we're going to look at epics, but then immediately run into, well, that's delivered by 3 different teams across 5 different, projects, and it just falls apart.
And Chris, you're hitting on some of our challenges and what we struggled with the last few years. I'll say few years. I mean, it's been longer than that. And part of the reason we want to come back to this and bring someone in from the outside was to say, okay, how do we make sure we don't go down the path and use the tool in a different way than it's intended? now that we're pulling together, we're making the investment in things like there are resources that are responsible for product and portfolio management. Even when we get to product management, we're already starting to have the conversations of, like you just gave the example, above product, where we're really talking about these are the value streams that cross platforms. And the investment's going to be at that value stream level, which it's kind of hard to slice and dice that when we have no consistent standard structure in place. So I think that's going to be our, that's going to, we'll see some of that, I believe, in the road mapping, where it says, okay, where do we start? What are some of the things we need to do so we can start flushing out that structure and the processes and governance that go along with that? Because absent that, you're right, we're going to fall right back into work, and we're just going to manage work.
Right. And but this is, it's really neat stuff. And if we can get the governance, the structures, the hierarchies, all of that in place, we can do this in an automated way.
And I would say, Chris, I would say that that structure, that strategy structure, and tying it then to how the work is broken down and given to teams, that is key for the product office and the PPM to set, and then we can gate it consistently.
And I'll try to be quiet from here, but so like also you Natalie, you mentioned Power BI. Yes, I'm familiar with Power BI. You mentioned the transaction database behind it. You mentioned plan views, not a general ledger. All things that are very familiar with Derek and I, and there are things that we have. I mean, the team has done some really neat things around the rate replication and whatnot, so that it virtually ties to the general ledger, which is also at a very low level of detail. But it's not, I mean, how we come up with that transaction database that feeds this, some of that data may not be necessarily coming from PlanView, right? So I'm very interested to know, okay, so how do you get to those levels of detail? What do you do in the tool versus don't do in the tool? Because I absolutely agree with you. PlanView is not a very good, general ledger cost other than effort type tool.
And I think getting back to, because I know we like to dive right into the data itself. I mean, if we get some of the other structure and the other things defined, you're right, Chris. PlanView doesn't need to be everything. We need to know where those repositories are, just like we've done with NC3, and we're now doing integration there. We're not trying to make PlanView do what Jira's doing on the work intake side. So we just gotta understand it, but it becomes real hard if we don't have the standards and the governance and the processes across those things we're trying to roll up to. So
thank you.
Okay, sorry, Natalie, go ahead.
No problem. And I'm glad that you are excited. I think, we wanted to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to hear and see, so that you when I show you the roadmap we're thinking of, it makes sense. My statement about, PlanView and being a financial, GL system, it does have financial ability. And the information in here, yes, might be effort-based, might be effort rate-based. It could be hardware, software, depreciation, but everything in here is loosely reconciled right back. But it's used for prioritization, planning, scoring, annual planning, rolling wave planning for work, epics, programs, and people. And that's its intent. And usually it's not the source system for the financial information. And that might be a big obvious at that point, but making sure that we understand where our barriers are just helps us to stay focused. The other thing that these views, both on the product side and on the strategy side, that we are able to see is this road mapping functionality. And I can see products, which accesses another functionality within the tool, right? Where I've associated work now to a strategy. We're looking at it from here, but we also have then a different view, which is called outcomes. This is operational, and it's a productized view. And normally we would do something like total cost of ownership on this screen, because this information is more operational. It's not organized by strategy. It's not organized by work. It's organized by the products that are supported or the services, that NASCO provides, application maybe even that NASCO owns. So everything may not be innovative and strategic. These are the things that are keeping the lights on that I have to spend money on first and probably take effort, that's the top from where my resource pool is available. And I can see the road mapping here as well. And I can see the cost and financial information here as well. So we have the ability to get to 2 more structures in the plan of the application, to see your money and your work in various different ways. And where you're at right now, sitting on this work structure, we're limited because I only have access to that one structure. And not only that, I only have access to the lowest level. These outcomes and strategy structures allow me the entire tree by which to plan, prioritize, and rank and score. On the work side, I don't have that. On your work side, you only have the ability to rank and score, govern just the work itself, and not the program, the strategy, the mission. So here, it would just be everything sitting at this lowest level. All this up here is not available to me, to do too much with. But once we introduce and open up that strategy view for you, which is one of the first things we want to do, we can give you then access to the entire tree. So you have a whole lot more visibility.
Is level
Repeat,
6,
please, Chris.
like still the base unit of aggregation? Not to get too into the weeds.
You asked a question about the base unit of aggregation.
Yeah, you're muffled. I don't know if you changed your mic, Chris, but you're pretty muffled.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It was just a
Okay.
little quiet there for a moment. Go ahead.
Yeah, so is work still the base unit that is aggregated up to the other structures, even once we open them up?
Yes. So work sitting right here, this work item, it's sitting physically on this work structure.
Right.
It then has a physical association strategically to the program. It also has a association to the product structure sitting on the other structure, this outcome structure I just opened, so that I can see also its alignment to the product that's impacting. So this piece of work is strategic. It rolls up to this strategy tree, but it's also supporting this product. So this product is, maybe year over year, the same product, but we're enhancing it in some way because it's part of our strategy.
Right. So for the team, when you work equals project ID in our world. Work
Yes.
also is commensurate with a CSR in our world. So the point I'm making there, team, is that, when we try to redo the capital process and, finance says, sorry, I still need these 2 buckets. I still need a bucket for this and this. That's part of the whole reason why, because you can't take that work and break it into different pieces if you're not tracking it discretely. Right. So that's where oftentimes, as we tried to work through this, finance will be, oh no, I still need a bucket for this and this because of the way we roll up. I mean, we roll up by product hierarchy today. So we could roll up by strategy, But if you needed a strategy, if you took a work and needed to break it up across 3 strategies, then you're into a math exercise.
I
So,
think, Chris,
I think,
go ahead, Natalie.
well, yeah, and I think I'm thinking that there's going to be some things that we need to model once we've got the recommendation back from Plan View. And I think that actually helps us set the strategic layers appropriately, right? Because I think, and I'm not the expert, so I'm asking the experts to answer conceptually what I think I just heard you say, Chris. I think that we have to set up our strategic layers so that funding is assigned at the right layer, and you are able to get the information that is necessary in the financial process. That's what I think I heard.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Because the work still is delivered at the work level, right? So if you fund at a level above that, you still have to divvy it up so that it gets to the appropriate work buckets.
Yep. Got it.
Okay, so this is great. This is going to give me what I need to move on to the roadmap. I think we're in a good position. So I showed that information to Pam when we first were talking about, what we needed to do and the challenges that you were having with the application. And so what we did was we worked on what do the deliverables actually need to look like and when, what made the most sense. So we identified here at MVP1, we grouped everything into a value statement spaced out into chunks of work. So the first one is a quick one. It might take us some time to do it, but we have already started some very lightweight configuration to be able to prove out the use case. So one of the first things that we're going to start with is the strategic programs, value streams, initiative planning, and then allowing also then a hybrid model, much like you saw mine, where my traditional work can still be visible and available to me in that strategy structure. So this top piece right here is where we want to start and where we have already started to try to tell our story. We want to be able to create that strategic portfolio so that it provides a funding structure for us and we can prove that story out. We want to see what it looks like with objectives and key results. Maybe for the traditional, if we can see what kind of KPIs we can make available to us. Now, I'll go back to PlanView in just a moment and show you some of our reporting that we have in this space so that we can, start to see the value that we can get from there just using that. We want to start looking at what the product structure might need to look like. We place this in MVP1 because it could very well fit on your strategy structure as a product delivery team. However, if it doesn't, if these are products that are operational, we have space over here in MVP3 to start thinking of what's it need to look like if they don't all fit in the strategy structure. We want to look at the financial plan, or at least I do. I want to come back and revisit it and make sure that it's deep enough and it's high level enough, right, to do the job that it needs to do to be able to be strategic funding and be operational at the same time by not overcomplicating our world inside PlanView and making sure that it's not trying to do something it wasn't intended to do. So there's no changes. It's just simply an assessment with a recommendation. So it could be something or it could be nothing. We don't know until we do it. We want to take a look at Agile Place. Again, no decisions. It's just an exploration so that we can understand how we might get that visibility to the work happening in JIRA. There's a world out there of execution that we have no visibility to. So let's just start looking at what could it look like if we came in through Agile Place. It's one option. PlanView does integrate with Jira directly. It's just a little friendlier using Agile Place, and I would like just the opportunity to explain it and see if it has a place there to be able to see maybe work intake. It's the only place that links to strategy. So do we want that? Are we open to seeing epics in that way and joining and connecting, associating work back to the strategy structure that way? So these last two things are simply discovery. There's no decision and no work happening at all. Actually, the last three bullets. So we're focusing on these first three. And like I said, we've already started and should have something, if you agree, if the stakeholders agree, come back and show to you when we're done with the work, and then also come back with our findings on this discovery work. This is what we think. This is a recommendation from us as a team.
So just a quick FYI, so those that are not familiar with the term Agile Place, PlanView has recently renamed some of their products. And so when we say Agile Place, that's Lean Kit, as you may have known of it before. So it's a tool that we already have in place, but just wanted for you guys to make that connection.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. I forgot. So you'll see an interfaces layer here. This is just one of the interfaces that I know of that I need to be conscious and aware of as I'm making any changes in your application. Some of the reports that we have access to, this is likely to grow, but there are some reports out of the box that meet some of the requirements that you had and provide some of the visibility. Obviously, for us, the most powerful reporting would be column sets or Power BI. So if that is an option, it's something that we can look at. If not, we still have the fast track reports out of the box that provide some views until you're ready to do something more custom. The benefit statements on the bottom are directly from your internal team, your words. So hopefully these resonate with you in some way. So MVP 1 for the quick win facilitates your PPM decision-making, visibility to your budget allocations, capturing and facilitating management of the OKR, and your enterprise strategic portfolios and programs. So MVP 1, it's a quick win, but it's going to, it's not going to be quick like it's going to be done in a week. There's going to take some thought and some internal decision-making to make sure we have the strategy right. When we're comfortable with this, the most logical next step then seemed to be to make sure that our project management community was given some attention. So we want to look at the redesign of the work structure. Now that we have the strategy structure, the work structure probably is in a position now where it can be possibly more user-friendly or maybe more aligned to its new purpose, where I'm executing work. Because all of my financial, the top heavy stuff is now sitting over here in MVP 1 on the strategy. Does this need to change? And we don't know that just yet. Financial planning improvements. Are there financial planning improvements that we need to make? We don't know that, right? So this isn't based on any decision that we know to be true right now. It's just an opportunity for us to take a look at it after we've moved those projects over to the strategy that belong here. We want to standardize that PM experience and make sure that we are enabling them in the best way possible and not constraining them to anything that they're doing today. We want to see any improvements that we might have to the RM or team experience. PlanView has now moved on to that whole team concept or persistent team management from an Agile perspective. So what is that? And are there any opportunities there that we can take with your application? There are some options for automated timesheets and Agile costing that we could look at if this is something that we wanted to be able to get for actual effort in portfolios for any reason. Should we change any of the things that are up here that we think are necessary, then we can do the training on that for MVP2 and enable your project management community to manage their work items or their resources in a more effective way in PlanView.
Hey, Natalie.
Yes.
So question around automated agile timekeeping. With PlanView or with what you've seen out there in the industry, even with JIRA, if agile teams are disciplined, structured, governed at their, their storyboard level, are there tools that are now automating timekeeping based upon resource assignments, right? So, so you immediately know, oh, Joe's working on story, blah, 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 or those are the stories that are in this sprint. So this team that is mapped to that roadmap or that dashboard automatically get aggregated there. Does that make sense? What I'm...
Yes, that's this use case right here. Bullet point number 5. There are some things that I'm going to show the team. We may even be able to demo it and stand it up in a sandbox environment and just take a look. Agile costing only works with Agile Place. If we have that, if we do think that is an option loosely, again, no decisions will be made, even in MVP 1 or 2. However, we can stand up a demo and take a look at it and see if it's something that can, meet your use case. And everything that you just said to me is accomplished right here. And so when we show it, if you like the way that it is solved, it's certainly an option for us for sure.
Yeah, but the thing, Natalie and Chris, I think the thing that we just need to be careful with, which is where I think this will help us as we start to break down the roadmap and kind of prioritize these things, is even on the agile costing. We've got to, we got to get to a point when we say agile, does that mean the same thing across all the teams and how they're working? So we still have standards we need to get in place before we jump to, telling that, and we got to get the agile COE aligned with that as well, because they're the ones that's going to need to help govern this.
Right. So I'm thinking from the governance point right now is the work ID and the tight management of where people are charging time. If you were to go to that type of solution, then the tight management is around ensuring your roadmap is standardized, governed, ties to contracts. The roadmap becomes your time card. And that's where we've got a long way to go there to get all of that standardized.
Yep. But I think we can prove out, just like Natalie's talking about, as we go through the MVPs, we can prove out to see which way, what are our options? And I think that's the key. What are our options, still trying to stay within the tools that we have that we're already paying a lot of money for and not using to the full extent.
I will, but I will add to that not just the story level, because I think sometimes we have to be careful that doesn't, Chris, turn into more like that micromanagement. But again, if we redefine or really drive our features and making sure the success is coming from that feature epic, maybe it'll help your group too. So you don't have to maybe necessarily get down so low, so to speak, because if our features and our epics have that value map, I hope maybe that they're, especially for you to say, oh, okay, those epics, that portfolio, there's the value, right? So definitely something to be like thinking through from as we try to, transform more into an agile capacity and more from objectives and value, right? So I'd hate for you guys to always be at the, like the story level, So
yeah, the key becomes, what are the funding mechanisms?
Yeah.
So I totally appreciate that. The level of governance, financial control for a NASCO funded activity is considerably, has a much lower administrative overhead than something that is being built to a customer. So, I think that's where you immediately get to, the reality is approximately 25% of our revenue is specifically billed back to customers. So unless you
Right.
get the customers to agree to just fund teams, which I haven't seen them very willing to do that, they're, the customers are funding outcomes. They're funding, I want this implementation, I want this outcome. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, Sean. The reality is, unfortunately, we still have to build customers.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope that that's a a mindset shift. As we talk about this plan is spectacularly tactical, right? But where in the behavior and the mind shift to be able to really embrace these changes is really critical as well, right? So yeah, I totally know where you're coming from, where you feel like the clients are like micromanaging at the hour per hour, dollar per dollar, and it's like, oh my gosh, we need to get up just a couple levels above, right? Because we really, a story is almost kind of like almost meaningless unless your feature or your epic is really delivering that value, right? And if you can't tell that story, then of course, what are they going to do? What's your hour? What's your timesheet, right? It's like, oh, yeah.
Sure, yeah. If you're delivering the feature functionality, then yeah, they don't care about time cards.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just a time check here. So
Thank you.
I would like to get to at least a little bit of the demo for some of the people on here that, especially like Chris and Linda Lee. I know you guys have seen them, but still. So let's keep moving.
So MVP3 is the look at a product structure. So that's the outcome structure for us, and looking at total cost of ownership and that operational type views. We think that will facilitate your product level decision making, scheduling, and financial management, and then the product road mapping. Not that I can't do these things again on the strategy structure, but I don't know that we know what we don't know just yet. All of this gets us to MVP4. And this is one thing that Pam did admittedly say to me, we really want to get here really, faster, as fast as possible. However, it's really, I could do this and I could do it first, but if we're not good at this, then it won't really matter. This is only going to be as good as how we're doing this stuff here. So I think we finally all just came to the agreement. Yes, we do need to make sure that all of this is correct so that we can start to plan it and do our scenario modeling and planning inside PlanView. I've got all of my clients use PlanView for their scenario planning and their annual or rolling wave plans. They're in there monetarily, they are all in there, they're scored, they're weighted, and they use this, and they start like in April, they go through in June, they go through in October, and they have their annual plan. And then what is published from there, is those are the marching orders. That's what everyone's doing. I do it for the Agile group. They do it for their PI planning. So getting us here, does require at least the MVP 1 and 2 are operational. MVP 3 is just everything off the top. So it's not necessarily required. But as we go through this, we can rethink, what we want to do with these MVPs in any case. But we do think, though, that it will take us until March to even kick this part off. It's still aggressive, in my opinion, but would definitely be the earliest. And then in our future, we don't even know what's in the future. So I just put other products. This, though, would be the opportune time to, after we've done all of our homework, what approach are we taking to get the visibility into the execution that's sitting in JIRA? Is it all rolled up to features? Is it rolled up to epics? Are we bringing it through Agile Place through the Kanban? Are we bringing it directly into portfolios? Is it going to work? Is it going to strategy? So I think there's just a lot that needs to be known before we jump right into this pool and not knowing how deep it is. So this is our plan. This is our roadmap. We're looking for you to approve this, answer any questions that you have, and any concerns that you have, and then we will keep on trucking and meet up with you and give you statuses regularly on our progress. the value statements from PlanView on all of those are on the following slide. These are value statements from our scope documents. These are pretty standard. These are from your team. So these are the value statements internally, PlanView, and these are yours. So you'll see the differences. The rest of this deck is just simply starting to try to prioritize and come up with how long each one of these MVPs could take. They're split into a sandbox and testing, and then a release out to the NASCO community. So they are split. If we're just two people doing this implementation, it can take anywhere from 6 to 9 weeks to implement them. But if we have help, if we have others, if we're engaging others, and of course they can overlap. So we're still working on these things. And I didn't want to finish it until we met with you, our stakeholders, to get agreement on this direction.
So this is Linda Lee. I guess my obvious question would be, we're in the midst of rolling out a new product portfolio management framework and process, and governing that with the leaders that our CEO is asked to help oversee and guide that work. I guess, Heidi and Derek, how do you see this enabling that, or potentially conflicting with it? Hopefully not conflicting.
Yeah, I think it's definitely supportive, not conflicting. I do want to sit down and just kind of map in MVP 3 and 4, and make sure I understand some of the capabilities and whether or not, what the timing looks like for those, because we do want to be able to do 2024 planning in the tool. Now, I think we've got workarounds and ways to manage the process for 2023, and at least starting 2024 outside of the tool. But when we get into those couple of releases, I want to sit down and just map that out a little bit more. And then I may have some questions or some tweaks to ask for.
And then I guess my other question is from back to what Chris was talking about in modeling this, or maybe using your sandbox environment. Is that where is that? I'm sorry, I'm trying to read all the words. Where is that happening? I feel like I want to make sure we got kind of buy-in early, so that as we're testing it out and fine-tuning it, the concept makes sense to everybody.
And we've got multiple sandboxes. I think the whole point here was to make sure we were aligned on the breakout of these MVPs, what we can actually get started on, and there's more. I think Natalie was, saying, it just depends on, what help we get. And it's back to Heidi's point. It should align. I mean, only way we're going to put some of this stuff in is actually have that ownership and that governance back with your team. So that becomes the input. So it should be enabling, not conflicting, some of the things that even go beyond PPM, back to what Chris is saying, because once the work hits, that will help us start defining the structure back up. That's what we've been missing for years.
Yeah. And you made a great point earlier about the Agile COE. I mean, that work is being planned for early 2023 as well. So yeah, just need to make sure we're getting the right things connected to this, so that it's representative of where we're going holistically.
Totally agree. And I see PPM as a major input, providing input of, okay, what is the process? What is the standards? How are they? And where does that fit here? And Agile COE, as we start to get into the lower levels of how, that work being managed differently by different teams. What's the Agile COE, some of the standards and things, so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. And that's exactly why, like Sean is on as well, with Heidi and you and Chris, because there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of them are really taking your inputs and then us kind of going into those sandbox environments, and trying to play back to you what we hear, how it would work if we were to do it within the constructs of the tool.
Yep.
And Natalie, if I missed something, correct me.
Hey, Derek, it's Bonnie. I'm wondering if, and maybe you already have this, but to everybody's point here, if we took this and sort of mapped it out across the organization with the relevant stakeholders and initiatives that are going on. I know we've got a lot of stakeholders on this call, but maybe just like a heat map or something, or a roadmap, something that sort of says, like, because when I look at the project management, I'm saying, okay, is that for implementation? Is that for product? Is that for all of the above? Is the IMCOE involved? Right. And this is the first time I'm seeing this. So maybe all that stuff has been thought about, but it'd be nice to see a map of all the cross dependencies in the enterprise so that it can be, mindfully tied together.
Yeah. Well, we got to be a little careful, because right now you're right. If we start looking at implementations and things like that, there's certain things we're kind of cutting out and trying to tie back to how do we want to manage work going forward, not how are we going to change the work that we're managing now.
Right.
Or, and so I think the prototyping and demoing stuff, I think will start to lead us down a path. Then if that's where we want to go, then it becomes a matter of, okay, how broad reaching is the change? And we're not there yet, not even close.
Right, but I think the good
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I think the good news here is that, work is still the base element that drives all of these scenarios.
Yeah.
And my point there is NASCO, we're really good with managing work buckets. So, at a tactical level, maybe not at a strategy level. So the point I'm making is that we already have a lot of good pilots in place that you don't even call them pilots. I mean, we've got dedicated teams, we've got agile teams, we've got implementations going on. We have a way of delivering each of those in our current structure. So from that point of what I'm saying is that we've got the building blocks, which I think is much easier to arrange those building blocks in different ways than to start from scratch and not have any building blocks. So we gotta be careful what we bite off here, but at the end of the day, you still have the work.
Right, and at the end of the day, that work may be being delivered differently across teams. If you're looking at the entire portfolio, even if you look at the 3 agile teams that we were trying to bring along in SAFE, they're delivering differently. So if we want to start with what we believe are real dedicated teams, yeah, we could do that. And that was my point with your question, Bonnie. I don't want to. I'm not going to jump out there across the whole enterprise and say, hey, here's everything we're changing. We got a lot of things we need to prove out to make sure we don't lose visibility of what we have controls in place for already. And if we are going to change how we have those controls, we need to do that consciously as we work through the prototyping.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking more along the lines of what Chris was saying, kind of taking stock or inventory on where are we solid, where are the opportunities and what's the scope we want to tackle first, right? Just so that there's clarity. And then does it need to intersect with another broad initiative that's going on so that it implements, complementary.
Yep. And the one thing, go ahead.
Yeah, Derek, it's Heidi. I was just gonna add. I think that we've got for the PPM 3 very good examples that we're piloting for the PPM process that actually cross implementations and products that are existing and in progress and have new initiatives, and then a brand new thing. So I think those are 3 really good places to test out the PPM process and the tools. And then we have the sandbox where we can test out other scenarios as we work through the MVPs. So I think that's all goodness. I'm agreeing with both Chris and Bonnie.
Okay, some of those points, Pam, maybe you and I can get together and make sure that we've hit on those.
Sure. Yes.
All right, we have 5 minutes left. I guess my one question to everyone, I know we've talked about a lot of things, and I appreciate the conversation. If we just focused on MVP 1, it sounds like that is a good direction for at least for us to start with. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, I think it lines up with what you're doing also, Heidi, with OKRs and things like that.
Yes, I agree. MVP 1 is the right place to start. PM.
Yeah, I agree as well.
All right, wonderful. We can always, when we come back and status where we are and what work has been done, we can always revisit this and see if some things need to move around in or out and make sure that we're making the best use of our time.
Yeah, Natalie, I think a key point here being is, we're trying to prove out what could be. So as we start moving down the path, saying, okay, now how do we operationalize that? We're not at the point of operationalizing. We're still proving out how it could be. What are those associated process steps? What are the associated governance items that goes along with that? Do we have those things in place? If those aren't in place, then we're not going to operationalize anything. Because we're not, we can't rework. We can't start this. I mean, we need some clarity. We need to make sure that the clarity between finances requirements and the product requirements and the Agile COE requirements are there. So then we can start saying, because it's going to impact as we start to go across the organization, then we can start saying, what's our plan? Is it just on new work? Is it on how we're going to start 2024? Is it in which planning starts where, in August of 2023 and those type of things. So,
yes, for sure. Everything's going into a sandbox. And so, yes, it's all thinking through. Pan can help with all the internal, requirements and everyone that needs to be engaged everywhere. But at a minimum, I agree that this isn't something that's going to be really, really, it's a quick win, but it still has a 9-week timeline. So it's still out there. All right, so we've got 2 minutes. Want to respect everyone's time. Thank you so much for being able to get together, making yourselves available the week right before Christmas. And I guess there's more to come as we get busy.
Definitely
appreciate the work.
Yes, definitely. And I know we kind of pushed to try at least get this through the end of the year. So thanks for you guys for just jumping in on that impromptu request.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, team.
Yeah, thank you. Good job.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.